What's going on, everybody? Welcome. This is Whistlekick Martial Arts Radio, and today, Andrew and I are going to talk about the unintended consequences of guilt. The fact that sometimes, within the context of martial arts, we try to use guilt as a motivator, but it doesn't always go the way we want it to. It has unintended consequences. What do we mean? Well, stick around and you will find out soon enough. If you're new, make sure you hit whistlekick.com. If you've been around a while, make sure you hit whistlekick.com because we are constantly adding, improving, changing new products. Tons of cool stuff going on there all the time, including our store. Use the code podcast15 to save 15% on a training program or a shirt or a mug
or a
hoodie or a hat or some sparring gear or any of the many things we've got going on over there. You can also check out whistlekickmartialartsradio.com, the world's #1 traditional martial arts podcast, according to people that are not us, which is fun to say. And all of the 800 and something episodes that we've released since we started this show. If there's a topic that we haven't covered that you want us to cover, you should let us know, and then we will potentially cover it. Is there a guest that we have not had on the show that you think we should? Reach out. Let's see if we can make it happen. If you say Chuck Norris, I will write you back and say, if you can make the introduction, we will try, because we've been trying.
If you can connect me to Chuck Norris directly, I'll make it happen. I just haven't been successful in connecting to him.
Yeah. So there you are. If you want to support us, if our mission to connect, educate, and entertain the traditional martial artists of the world means something to you, if you, like us, believe that even 6 months of martial arts training has lifelong impact and that the world would be a better place if everyone trained for at least that long, please consider supporting us. You could make a purchase. You could tell people about the things that we do. You could join our Patreon, patreon.com/whistlekick. But if you want the entire list, all of the things, if you are part of our martial arts family, you can go to the family page, whistlekick.com/family. You got to type it in. There's no link. All the things you can do to help us, direct links to the places to leave ratings and reviews, as well as your own exclusive stuff we do not post elsewhere. Some of my thoughts, photos, discount codes, stuff like that, and I update it once a week. This was your topic. You brought this. Well, a friend brought this to you, and I think it's absolutely worth discussing because we live in this time where stress and anxiety and guilt are rampant. Yeah. And maybe those three don't all fit on the same plate for everyone, but for me, they do.
Yeah, and they could be different levels.
For sure. You know, one of the things that personally I've gotten a lot better at, but I struggle with, I deal with some anxiety, but when I feel like I've done something wrong because of the stress, because of the anxiety, that guilt has a much stronger impact and hangs around much longer. There are still things that I did 10, 20, 30 years ago that I feel guilty about. And I've done what I can to remedy them, but it doesn't even have to be anything big. It can be, I shouldn't have said that.
Sure. Yep. And I think most of us listening have something like that. At least a thing. Yeah, for sure. So this topic was brought to me by my good friend Angie, and her comment was, we have been at a school in the past where the instructor at testing would say, or maybe not even testing, but just would say at some point, look to your left and right. Statistically, the person next to you is not going to be here at the next test.
And that's a common thing to say in some form.
Yep.
Sometimes it's at a beginner's class or at a testing, or just when the instructor's feeling frustrated.
Yep. Or to the person testing for brown belt in the room who was here to this brown belt who was here in the room that was here when you started. And it's usually the instructor, maybe the people in front, but statistically he'll say hardly anybody's going to raise their hand.
Yeah, there's a lot of turnover in martial arts.
Yeah, and there is. And I recognize that.
And it's by nature. And we've talked a lot about our beliefs on why and things that we can change. But that's not the purpose of today's discussion. Yeah. Today's discussion is about that statement or other versions of that statement or other actions that come from the same place and how they make people feel.
And
how do you go ahead?
So, I mean, the statement comes from a place of you stuck it out, good job, right? That's the intended outcome. That's what they expect.
Yeah.
But it, unfortunately, for a lot of people, they hear that as, oh, I'm not going to be here because statistically I'm below that person and I'm not going to be here during the next test. Like there's some guilt about, I guess I better stick it out because I don't want to be the person that's not here,
Or what happens if you get injured and you have to take a leave of absence, or something comes up with work, or you have a baby and now suddenly your priorities are a little bit different and you're not going to class as often.
Yep.
I gave you the example, and you've heard this, and I suspect many of you have heard of this if it hasn't been said directly to you. The martial arts instructor out in the world, at the grocery store, for example, and a past student comes up, seeks them out, sees them, comes up to them, and is apologetic for not having come back to class. Oh, sensei, Mr. Master, Mrs., Ms., whatever.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry I haven't been back to class. I really miss it. Is it still in this place at this time? Now, why are they doing that? Because they feel guilty.
Mm-hmm.
They feel guilty that there is an expectation of them
that they should still be there.
That they should still be there, and they have not met that expectation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is that sometimes the case? Yeah. Maybe mostly is that the case? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps. Most of the instructors I know want people to train, but they want them to want to train. They don't want them to be there if they don't want to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is an important distinction when we start talking about guilt.
Yeah. And I think sometimes it's not intended to be that way.
I think it's usually not intended that way.
I mean, I have been victim of this myself. My good friend Angie that brought this to me, she and I both tested for our Shodan together in October of 2019. And then we all know what happened in March 2020. And she stopped training because of things that happened.
Sure.
And then her work picked up and she became more busy. There were more things that held more of a priority for her, which is fine. I missed her in the school. I missed training with her when we were able to go back and do trainings. And I probably more often than I should have, would say things like that to her. Like, I really miss
you. Told her you missed her.
Yeah. And like, hey, when are you going to come back? Like, it's okay to come back.
You were being encouraging.
In my brain, I was being encouraging. And it came across as making her feel guiltier than she should. Because she has nothing to feel guilty about. Like, she's allowed to make the decision to not be there. And so I don't think we intend for that to be the case, but I think sometimes it's important to step back and see how what we're doing is being received by others.
Right. Now, you could say, let's pretend that, it's a slightly different situation where Angie is not your friend, you're the instructor, and she's a student, and, she comes up to you at the grocery store.
Yep.
Right? Or you go up to her, or whatever, right? You see her in a social situation. You could make the argument, well, so what? So what that she feels guilty? You're trying to do what's best for her.
I hate that.
But is her guilt making her more or less likely to come back?
Oh, for sure, less.
Yeah. Who steps into a situation that they feel is going to make them experience guilt? Very few people choose to do that.
Exactly.
In fact, a lot of people will wait until the guilt fades. But if you continue to poke at it, it never fades, and they'll never come back. Now, given that this is your friend, and I believe we talked about at one point a while ago that you know this because she told you. How would you approach that situation? How would you offer encouragement, if at all, without it being received in a way that makes her feel guilty?
I think in this particular case, it would have been not so frequent. It wouldn't have been something that I would have brought up as much. And I think it would have been just a little more open-ended. like, hey, it'd be great to have you back. Like whenever you're ready, like we'll be here for you, type of thing.
Yeah.
As opposed to being, I was more direct about when are you coming back. Those types of things. Open-ended is received a lot better than those direct confrontations.
And I think that that's kind of the heart of it. And, I've always told people martial arts is there for you when you're ready to come back.
Absolutely. Yep.
And, granted, my time as a school owner was very limited, but I had plenty of people leave. And my response to them every single time was the same, assuming that they told me that they were leaving. Come back whenever you're ready.
Yep.
I'm not going to bug them. Now, in the modern era with email and things like that, might there be a way to communicate with past students that reminds them they're welcome to come back? Yeah, absolutely. But the guilt comes in from disappointment, from an expectation that you have disappointed someone that you value.
Yeah.
And generally people value their instructors. There's a difference between an email that we know comes from a system and you having a personal conversation with someone. And I know that you and Angie are close friends, so this probably happened when you were in a social situation.
Yeah. Well, we see each other a lot. Yeah.
You are peers in that way, and she wants to spend time with you as her peer, as her friend, not be reminded that this thing that is important to her, but just happens to be far enough down the list that she's run out of time in the day.
Sure. Yep. Absolutely.
We all have more things that we want to do than we have time for. If I didn't have to sleep, there are plenty of other things I would do. Probably the same for you. Probably the same for all of you out there in the audience. So if we take this to heart, there are very few things that we stop doing. We just change the way we do them.
Yeah.
We don't highlight the negative side of people leaving. Instead of saying, think of all the people who aren't here, you can say, think about how many times you chose to be here when you didn't have to or when it was difficult.
Yep. It makes it way more positive. It frames the same sort of sentiment in a different way, in a more positive way, as opposed to a negative way.
You've probably heard me say, I say it all the time. I say it to the clients that I work with. I say it to the team. There's power in choice. And the words that we use have a dramatic impact on how we look at that choice. So in that example, you chose to be here. You've chosen to be here when it wasn't easy. You've chosen to take this test. You've taken that power and that choice, as opposed to highlighting that the majority of people have chosen not to be here. Well, let's also keep in mind that when you do that, you are suggesting that the social proof is to not train.
Yeah.
That's also not a good thing. That's a whole other set of conversations.
Yeah.
Guilt is rarely a positive motivator. Where does guilt take most of us back to? Our childhood.
Yep.
I felt a lot of guilt as a kid. There are a lot of things I did that disappointed my mother. I don't like that feeling. I don't want to feel it anymore.
Yep.
Someone makes me feel guilty as an adult, probably not going to spend time with that person, whether it's a professional or a personal context.
Yep, absolutely. And the same can be true with students in your dojo. If you make them feel guilty, they are less likely to want to be around you.
Maintain a positive culture. Celebrate people's attendance. Celebrate people's achievements. And maybe put a little bit less energy into the non-accomplishments, the non-attendance. I don't like this word, but plenty of people do use it. The failures or the inadequacies, that's a better word, of people. The more we focus on something, the more we see of it, the more it shows up, the more it happens. Thus, the more you focus on the non-attendees, the inadequacies, etc., the more you're going to have, because if nothing else, the people who are there are going to think they don't matter and that their achievements don't matter.
Yeah.
Celebrate the good, celebrate the people who show up, celebrate the wins, make them feel positive, make them feel like they have made a good choice, and you will have the opposite effect. You'll have plenty of people showing up. In fact, I would argue if there was some way we could clone martial arts schools and do a study of this. One school had guilt. The other school framed it more positively, the positive school would have better retention of the students that didn't show up in the guilt school.
I think you're absolutely right.
So don't do it. It's dumb and it doesn't serve your purposes. It doesn't make anybody's life better.
Doesn't help.
And if the way you feel the need to react or interact with the people around you is by making them feel guilty, I'm going to suggest that you consider therapy. And I don't mean that in like a belittling way, but it's not a healthy way to relate to people, whether you're an instructor or not.
Yep. So two last things.
Okay.
I actually want to check my phone because I actually sent a message to Angie just before we recorded, and I want to see if she had any comments, but she didn't. Check. That's fine.
Well,
And
if she writes in comments, we can post them when this goes live.
Two, if she ever listens to this, she knows she's always welcome.
I hope you take this to heart. Martial arts should be a place that celebrates the growth, that remains positive, that creates a culture where even on our worst days, we want to be. If it is, then everything else falls into place. So just keep that in mind. Thank you for being here. Thank you for bringing this topic up. This is a great one.
Thanks, Angie.
Yeah. Thank you, Angie. Did we have anything else to add?
Nope. I think that's good.
All right. If you have a topic like this that you want to suggest, you can reach out to either of us, Andrew at whistlekickmartialartsradio.com, Jeremy at whistlekick.com. Remember, our social media, everywhere you can think of, is at whistlekick. If you listen to these episodes, guess what? Almost everyone has a video version now. We have officially crossed over into that territory. It's almost everyone. And you can find them at YouTube. You can also usually find them embedded. You still do that, right? We embed them in the pages at whistlekickmartialartsradio.com.
Yep.
Okay, so you can find them there if you don't want to hunt around for them on YouTube, or maybe you're searching around, you want to find an old episode. We also do transcripts if you prefer to read, or the main reason we do the transcripts, it makes it easy to search if you're looking for a past episode, but you don't remember who it was or what number it was. If you want to support us, if the work that we're doing here means something to you, please tell your friends about Whistlekick. Tell them about what we're doing. Come to one of our events. Experience the things that we're doing. Check out our books on Amazon. If you want the whole shebang, the entirety of the list, direct links to Patreon and all that, whistlekick.com/family. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you to those of you who support and contribute to Patreon and all the other things that we do. We appreciate you. Until next time, train hard, smile, and have a great day.